Welcome back to another episode of the Chief of Staff Show. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Sentari Minor, Chief of Staff at evolvedMD. Sentari, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah, so I want to jump right in. I know that you're at evolvedMD, which is an incredible startup. You guys are doing some really cool things. You've been 3 times recognized in the Inc. 5000. I want to hear all about that. Like, what has it been like? You've been with them for 4 years, which is a long time in startup life. How has that journey been?
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. I don't come from a healthcare background, so it's been a lot of just learning about the industry. But when I started at EvolvedMD, I was, say, I was sub 10, so employee, say, 8 or 9. Now we're close to 200 employees, so it's been great to see the growth over the last 4 years. But at the end of the day, what we do is we integrate behavioral health into primary care. So we are a mental health services company, and so it's been great to see us not only grow from a revenue standpoint, but a patient impact standpoint. And so during those 4 years, I started as our head of strategy. Really, I was to one, rebuild the brand. The company had been around for a couple of years, but it really needed to be kind of revitalized and kind of a new face to the market. And so revitalized the brand, built our first strategic plan, started building out our first executive team, and I've been with us since, and it's been a wonderful journey.
That's so incredible. I love when startups realize, like, really early on, like under 10, under 20 employees, that they need someone focused on strategy. So
Yeah,
whether it's the chief of staff or a head of strategy type of role, it's so good when they have that vision. So I'm always really encouraged when I see that. Like, this is not an afterthought, but like we want to be strategic, especially with the rebranding piece. That's really cool. I'm always telling people, like, as a chief of staff, you're filling gaps, like whatever's needed, that's what you're doing.
yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, I love that you've been able to focus on branding. Now, you hadn't been in healthcare before, but had you done branding before?
Yeah, so I've done marketing and branding before, and that was really kind of the number one thing brought in to do. And then as we were actually kind of going through what the job would be, so the founder of our company, I knew from a previous role. So prior to coming to EvolvedMD, I ran a CEO consortium of sorts that worked on social impact and philanthropic and political impact of the CEOs and the companies they work with. So one of the CEOs was actually Eric Oslin, my now boss. And so when we were kind of negotiating the role, he was like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, what do you need me to do?" And so it became this amalgam of marketing, strategy, and jack of all trades, which is eventually how I became chief of staff. But yeah, that's how that kind of came to be.
Yeah, I love that because that's just, I mean, exactly what I'm telling people. Like, and that's the reason why no two chief of staff jobs are the same anywhere
So
because
true.
you're filling in gaps. If you have a CEO that really needs you in marketing and branding, that's what you're doing. If you have one that needs you in budgeting and forecasting, that's
Yep.
what you're doing. So it's definitely cool that you were able to bring that expertise over to Evolved MD.
I love opportunities like this because it gives me time to kind of reflect on. It's been a really fun journey, so I'm proud and privileged to be in the role.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that it's that kind of growth from 9, 10 people to 200, and then to be awarded and recognized so often, like it's got to be incredible. I know you started working on like branding and rebuilding the brand. What are some of the things you're doing nowadays to Evolve
Yeah,
MD?
so since I started, and I can actually picture the office that we were in, and we were all kind of like all around a table. And then now we have this like great office, our corporate HQ. We're now across 5 different states. But when I first started, it was kind of building out the first strategic plan, building the brand, and then also thinking through like what does our executive team need to look like. And so we started onboarding folks, and then put some kind of processes in place when I first came on about like how do we meet, like what are the desired outcomes of meetings, engagements, like actually putting agendas together, all those sort of things. And now my job really is we have now an executive team of 11 that I sit on as chief of staff. And it's mostly my job is now I think about like running the office of the CEO, right? So it's making sure there's executive alignment, making sure that strategic priorities are top of mind and that we're all aligned and working towards those. And then also the overall company strategy. And then a big piece of what I do is also investor relations. So we're venture backed. So working with our board, preparing for board meetings, facilitating board meetings, doing all of that. And then when we go to the market next for another capital raise, I'll kind of lead the raise with our CEO too. So I do quite a lot of things in my current role. And the other piece that I would say is that's still the marketing piece. So the marketing team rolls up to me. I have a marketing team of five. So I really kind of oversee our external branding and everything there. And then also all of our internal comms comes through my office. And so how do we speak to our almost 200 employees? What's the tone? What's the tenor? What is the content? Those are the big buckets that I'm working on right now. It could all change in 6 months, which I actually love.
Yeah, I love that. And sounds like such a robust workload. I'm sure it's a lot,
It's
but
a lot, but it's rewarding. Like I'm a person that why I think I love the chief of staff role is because it's something different every day. You get to have your hands in something different and new, and I thrive in that. So I know some people like this is what I do every day, and that's just not me. So if there's something comes up every morning, I'm like, cool, I get to be part of the team that solves and fixes that, and I dig it a lot.
yeah, that's such a great call out. It's so important. Like you have to be someone that's cool with like jumping in and whatever we got going on, I'm rolling up my sleeves and figuring it
We'll
out.
do it. Yep. Yes.
So that's cool to see that sort of evolution at evolvedMD for you. Yeah. So one other thing I noticed that you do, you worked with that consortium for CEOs and for founders, and you do C-suite coaching. I'd love to talk some more about that because I think it's always so interesting. And I'm trying to sort of piece through this myself, how we can help more chiefs of staff as coaches, not, externally necessarily, but the fact is, like being a chief of staff, you are coaching your executive. When you're providing that feedback, when you're a sounding board, when you're a trusted advisor, having those coaching skills is like really necessary for that aspect of the role. So tell me how that has like played out for you.
Yeah. So I think one of the big pieces that is crucial for this role, especially with us, and we have an executive team of five five chiefs and then like four or five VPs. And so a lot of my time is really just sitting down and coaching with them. It's like, let's work through this problem. This is the institutional knowledge that you need to know about the company. Here's some context for you. And so I think my previous roles where I've worked with CEOs and talked and really coached them through some major things. Like I was in my previous role, summer of 2020, when we had COVID and George Floyd. I was the person in my previous role that people were coming to. It's like, how do I talk to my team about this? Like, coach me through that. And so it's been in my bio. I say I love to bring the best out of people and entities. So I'm a natural coach, right? Like, I dig having conversations about how do we level you up. What are the things that are getting in your way, and like how do we eliminate that? And so the coaching piece is actually probably the biggest part of the chief of staff role, especially when you're doing that with the multiple C-level folks in a team. I just had one of our folks in here right before this call, just kind of working through an issue that she's having. And it's like, all right, these are the things that I think you should be doing. Here are my recommendations. Let me know if there's anything else I can do there. So it's a huge piece, and I do love it. That's where I get a lot of my energy.
It's not that widely recognized, but when you're able to like be in that chief of staff position where you have the access, you have the ears of the execs, being able to coach them and having that skill set is so valuable.
Yeah, it's been great. And also, being the trusted advisor and partner of like, hey, what should I do about this? And that happens with our C-suite and my CEO a lot of times. It's like just sitting down. It's like, let's talk through how this should look. And being that sounding board it's so invaluable.
Yeah. And that's why I mentioned that to people too about the chief of staff is in a unique position. Now, I know you have marketing reporting to you, but most chiefs of staff, they're sort of on, just the office of the
On an
CEO.
island. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they're on an island, but that is actually, there's a benefit to that because then you're not tied to any one department's agenda.
You're a completely objective voice. And
Yeah.
I realize in my role it's unique, but I think I one of the things I do is I can be truly objective of like I'm not thinking about this from a marketing lens. I'm thinking about this from one, you as the CEO, what's best for kind of your brand, how you show up, all these things, but also as the company, what's right for it. And so I do think that a chief of staff role, like probably the most effective ones, are kind of completely focused on that. I mean, I think our organization is unique, and I like marketing and branding rolling up to me because I was kind of the one that rolled it all out from when we kind of rebranded. So it makes sense for right now, and that's the other thing. It's like everything makes sense for right now. This might again change in 6 months too.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool that you're in that sort of space to be able to handle it all wherever you're needed. If you need to run marketing, if you need to be the sounding board, like you just have it all covered. So
It's so
that's,
fun.
yeah, that's really cool. But yeah, I think that that's something like, and maybe you and I can talk offline about this, but I
Oh yeah.
think it's something that should be explored more, is that like coaching capacity. It's really important to a lot of people. So I coach chiefs of staff and people who are transitioning into becoming
Cool.
chiefs of staff. And so a big thing I'm always saying is it's not so much about having all the right answers. It's about asking the right questions.
Yes, and helping many times it's not about having the right answer at all. It's like being there to sit and get someone to arrive at the answer themselves, or just asking the right questions of like, well, why are you showing up this way? Or a big one would be like, what would happen if, or what would happen if we didn't? And so just asking the right questions is it's really powerful. Like being inquisitive as a chief of staff is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, chief of staff coaching, like it's asking the right questions. So that's really cool. So what got you, well, I guess you kind of shared some about how you got pulled into the chief of staff role here at evolvedMD. When your boss was coming up with, what do you want to do? Like, how can we fit you in? Like, we just want you on the team in some capacity. What led you to just determining that role in particular, chief of staff?
Yeah, so I became chief of staff maybe in a formal capacity probably about a year ago, maybe year and a half ago. So I was vice president of strategy and marketing and chief of staff for a couple of years, and then I was like, we had a great conversation. I was like, I think I can be the most effective to you, Eric, my CEO, if I really lean into the chief of staff. There's just so much happening in the company, and being that integrator, the air traffic control of everything happening there, and so I rolled into that role fully within the last year. And I think it was mostly me thinking about, look, I love helping companies, I love helping individuals. I also know that I know enough about enough to be kind of a functional gap filler anywhere. Like I can for instance, last summer, we had a team departure and a department head left. And so I jumped in to run that department for about close to 6 months. And that's something that I just love doing. And so being that jack of all trades, but also having some depth in each of those places has been really important. But for me, the role has always been about how do I best help the company? How do I best help the individuals and the humans within it?
Like you were saying, you get to fill all of these different gaps. That's another really cool aspect of the chief of staff role. And I don't know what you see in your future down the line, but I always say from the chief of staff from here, you can go anywhere because you get
Yeah,
that insight. You're looking at marketing, you're looking at product, you're looking at all of the teams. And so you're like seeing where can I be most impactful? What lights me up the most? And so it's a great launch pad too to other roles.
it's a great thing. I know, I haven't. My own executive coach has always, oh, he's been talking to me about like what's the next level of your video game, which I love. It's like you've been really not coasting, but like you're really good at this level, right? So what does the next level look like for you? I'm not. And I actually think this is why it works well for me and my CEO. I have no interest in ever being a CEO. So I know that for me. So there's no, like, I have no interest in that job. I think for me, I don't know what I want to do next. That's a good question. I'll come back to you on that. But I do, I dig the chief of staff role, and I dig just having a really deep understanding of the company, our vision, where it's going, and actually be part of like setting that strategy. It's very fun.
Yeah. And yeah, that's another thing too. It doesn't have to be like a stopping point. There's a lot of chiefs of staff more and more who are making it a career, like they're
Yeah.
career chiefs of staff. And especially when you're going from company to company, like we said, it's something different. It's something different every day in the
Yeah.
same company, but a different company is going to be a different challenge and, adventure.
Yeah, I have some friends and colleagues who are also chiefs of staff, and their roles were completely different, like completely different by company. So yeah, it'd be probably you're right. I'll probably after this do another chief of staff gig because it'll probably be wildly different than anything I've done over the last 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Lots of opportunities. And that's the cool thing too. Lots of potential and opportunities.
Yeah.
So, Centauri, one other thing I wanted to talk about is you mentioned that you were part of a group and you helped to advise CEOs, a consortium that talked about like social impact and different things. The reason I want to talk about that is because something I've been telling people more and more, like I love like Chief of Staff Network. We just had David Nabinski on. Love the communities around Chiefs of Staff. But I'm also always saying to people, make sure you're also networking with founders and CEOs and executives that are decision makers and hiring people, right? Because there's that sort of thing. So I'd love to hear your story around that, because when you're networking with these people and you have these organic relationships you're building, they can see what you bring to the table. Then, there's situations like yours where they're tapping you like, hey, I just need you on my team. So
Yeah.
can you tell me some more about that?
Yeah, so it was fun. So I was the regional director for a company now called Alder. So I worked with purposeful CEOs and executives here in Phoenix, in Dallas, and in San Francisco. So I split my time between the three markets and really doing some cool stuff around programming around like economic opportunity. We did a lot of facilitated a lot of like Jeffersonian dinners on some big issues. Ran a pack and ran was part of a foundation. So figuring out how to like guide dollars and investments from these CEOs and entrepreneurs through to make social impact, right? And by just doing that and being one good at the job, and by spending a lot of time with these folks, they naturally just get to see you in your element. And it's like a 3-year interview or however long you're with them or commercial for you. So I think that's a great point that you made about like just always networking and getting out there. And then the summer of 2020, my now CEO, we just sat down for our usual kind of catch up over drinks, and he was like, "Hey man, building and growing this company, and I want you on my team." I was like, "Oh wow, okay." And he was literally like, "Well, what do you want me to do?" He was like, "What do you want to do?" And then we kind of created this head of strategy role, and it's been history since. But it's been great to also work with the principal, so my CEO, and we had previous experience. So me coming in this role, I was already a trusted advisor, so it was easy for us to just kind of build the momentum. And I like last night we had a great dinner and we kind of reflected on some things and then talked about some stuff that we're going to do in the future. And it's been great. It's been wonderful to work with a colleague, a friend, a mentor, my boss. It all spun out from something that was completely unrelated to this.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of networking. You never know. Like, it's not just going in there like, oh, I need a job tomorrow. And so I'm just going to go like to this networking event and pass up my business card. It's about authentic relationships and not being in it just for like, can they hire me tomorrow for this role?
Yeah,
But building those relationships. And so people actually see, like you said, a commercial for you. Like people know they can trust you. They know this person knows what they're talking about, what they're doing. So I'd
yeah.
love to see that coming to
It's
fruition.
actually I sit on a board of a major nonprofit here in Arizona, and my two direct reports that I've actually poached them from that nonprofit. So I did the same thing. It's like I know you're going to be good at this. Come on over.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to like people that are interested in becoming chiefs of staff, people that are already chiefs of staff and want to, go to a different company or whatever the case. It's such a relationship driven role, and
Yes,
people can't see that on paper. People don't know, like, do they really connect? Building those relationships is just so important.
right.
So I love to see that happening there. Speaking of people who are interested in becoming chiefs of staff, do you have any advice for people?
I mean, my advice would be one, make sure it's something you really want to do because it can be an all-encompassing role. So you have to kind of have the temperament for it. I think really understanding like facilitation is really important. So be a good facilitator, understanding kind of big picture thinking. And also you hit something that was great, which is like you have to be really good with people. A lot of the time I'm my CEO's proxy, so I'm sitting in meetings on his behalf, or we have close to 200 employees, so there's a lot of things that I'm just brought into, and if I'm not able to connect with them, then it's not going to go well. I think that's important. As far as pathways, I'm not sure because chiefs of staff can come from anywhere, any backgrounds. I've seen some folks who were former EAs be chiefs of staff. I've seen former, chiefs themselves who've moved into a chief of staff role. So it's kind of like whatever your journey, just know what the job requires and make sure you're in it because it can be hard. But yeah, and I mean, I have my direct report is a associate, so associate chief of staff reports to me, and the things that we're working on with her is the exact things that I do, but at a kind of a more junior level, which is like facilitation, air traffic controlling projects, being the kind of person that fills in gaps. It's like this department needs someone to kind of figure this out. That's go figure it out, and I'll be here to help you. So yeah, I don't know if there's a direct pathway, but just being good with people, understanding strategy, facilitation, and I think really good project management. And also a big thing would be working in ambiguity. I think that's so important for chiefs of staff. It's like sometimes there's just not an answer. Or like you're just literally told, I don't know, go figure it out. If you're a person that can just go figure it out, then this is for you. And if that freaks you out, then don't do the job.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because there's also it's not only just, there's not an answer and you got to figure out the answer. Sometimes you got to figure out the problems too.
That's so true. Like, what are we actually solving for here? That's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. So like identifying those gaps. Yeah. So important. Now, there was one other thing I do want to ask. Sorry, I keep saying one other
No,
thing,
no, that's deeply good.
but I'd love to hear your thoughts because especially someone like you you've gone from working with an org under 10 people to now 200. And speaking of relationship building, a big part of the chief of staff role is the gatekeeper aspect, which can be a challenge for a lot of people. How has that come up for you?
That's a great question. We're candidly we're working on it, working through it. We had an interesting structure where we actually had two co-CEOs, and now we've moved to a sole CEO, and that's within the last quarter. And so now it's like really getting us in the mindset of exactly that, like what what was helpful before can't be helpful now. And so actually doing more of the gatekeeping for Eric, my CEO, of saying like, hey, actually have that go through me first, and I'll let you know if we have to do this. We're now starting to do that with like kind of PR stuff, and there's some other things. It's like send it my way first, and then we'll kind of assess if that's something you need to do. But I think candidly, it's hard for both sides, right? Like if a founder or CEO is like very much out there and they like to be of the people, sometimes they don't want to give up that control. And also, I'm like, okay, but then we also have to be realistic about your schedule and how you're spending your time too. So I would say candidly, I'm working on it, or we're working on it, and it's a dance every day. But I think we'll get to a good place here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but you've got to be the right kind of sort of people person, build those relationships so that it, reduces the friction in that capacity. So yeah. So Sentari, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Are there any parting words, anything that you'd like to add?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think more so that if there is a CEO out there listening, really think about getting a chief of staff. The amount of time that you can spend on being more strategic, more creative, whatever it is, because of a chief of staff is in your life is it's so invaluable. So please do. And if you are thinking about becoming a chief of staff, really look into the role, talk to some people who are in it, because I think sometimes it can be one of those roles that seems quite glamorous. And there's definitely some perks, but there's also like you're in it. You're in it every day, and so just make sure that it's something that you really want to do.
Yeah, that's incredible advice, and that's actually go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But that's exactly why I created this sort of platform and this series. So I appreciate you coming on because that's what it's all about, sharing awareness about what is a chief of staff, and it's not the same thing. Every person I've had on
Right.
has a different story of what the chief of staff role is, how it, comes across from them. But for everyone, it's very all consuming. It's something new every single day. It's, get your hands, you're getting in there. You're not just consulting, you're doing also and executing
Yeah.
and filling those gaps. You're controlling the air traffic. It's all the things. So you got to love it.
Yeah. So exactly. So you gotta love it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Centauri.
Thanks for having me.